Welcome, everybody, back to Tide Pod. Jack Knowlton, Tony Sakalas, your favorite writers from Tide Illustrated, with I think, second straight week here, Tony, of a sort of emergency pod, or at least a breaking news pod, very conveniently to take everyone watching and listening behind the scenes. We were about to start recording the show here, your typical show, kind of recap the first official visit weekend for Alabama, particularly talking about Keelon Russell's visit and do some little speculation, what it could mean if he commits. And then he went out and committed right before we started recording here, Tony. So we have a little bit of breaking news. Obviously, when you're listening to this, you'll have already seen. But Keelon Russell has flipped from SMU to Alabama, becoming Alabama's quarterback commit here in the 2025 class. Huge pickup, Tony. This is a name I think Tide fans will have known for a while now. Alabama offered him, I believe, back in April on his birthday, and then took an official visit here this weekend. That clearly went very well. He heard all of what he needed to hear and now commits here on Tuesday, June 4th to, solidify the Tide at the quarterback position, which is, of course, a position that you could say half filled in 2024. They lost a commit, got a guy in Austin Mack. We'll talk a little bit about that. But Tony, Keelon Russell, he's the number 47 player and the number 6 pro-style QB in the class, has gained a ton of buzz, was committed to SMU for a while, now has flipped. What do you make of it? A huge get here for the Crimson Tide.
So a future trivia question, hopefully a future easy trivia question for Alabama, because he'll become a notable player. But Keelon Russell is the first quarterback commit out of high school for Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, in the Kalen DeBoer era at Alabama. So that's kind of interesting. They were, you could almost count Austin Mack, who reclassified and redshirted at Washington, as like a member of this year's class, but he isn't. He's a transfer. He's of age. I think that this is a big thing for Alabama's 2025 class. It's a big thing moving forward. You look at the 4 quarterbacks Alabama has now. This is quarterback number 5, but obviously he won't be here until next year. You have to think that you're going to lose Jalen Milroe to the pros, most likely after this year. So then you've got, Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and Dylan Lonergan. And so this would give you 4 again. But, in today's climate, you're not even sure if you're going to have that. So I think this at least gives you probably 3. And that could be a really big deal. And he's a great player from a really big school up, near Dallas and Duncanville, one of those Texas powerhouses. He plays with a lot of talent. He plays with, at a school that has high expectations. And he's a kid that, he probably needs to polish off his game some, but is somebody that, can do a lot of things, has a lot of raw talent. We'll have to see how he continues to develop, but a lot of tools there. A lot of reason to be excited. He's a 4-star kid, but like one of those high 4-star kids, top 50 kid. So it's pretty exciting for Alabama. And now they have a quarterback in the 2025 class. It's always easier to recruit, when you have that quarterback there, that kind of like that main, player recruit. And so it'd be interesting too to see how Keelon kind of, kind of steps into that role. And maybe does he, become the leader in the recruiting class of trying to get other people to come to Alabama.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting how, officially shuts things down. I mean, you don't often see players flipping, multiple times, unless maybe it's a flipping back or a coach leaving situation. But, it benefited Alabama, I think, to have the first official visit. He had trip slated to, I guess technically Alabama, the second official visit, first one of June. He went to Ole Miss. That had reportedly gone really well. And he was also set to go to Florida and Oregon. Haven't fully confirmed yet if he is canceling those trips. You would like to think that he probably is, if he's already, confident enough in announcing his decision. But assuming those trips are canceled and Alabama showed him more than what Ole Miss had to offer, I think, that's a huge selling point and a huge win for Kalen DeBoer and Jamarcus Shepard. I know he is obviously a big fan of what they did at Washington and how they kind of ran things there and put quarterbacks in the NFL. Adam Gorney, the Rivals recruiting director, had a comparison to Jaden Daniels, and obviously another guy who did take a while, starting off at Arizona State, and then in his final year at LSU really showed what he could be and became a top 5 pick. And Russell, I think, is at a better stage almost, at this point and then coming into Alabama, learning under DeBoer, you'd have to think the sky's the limit for him if that comparison can come true. So just a massive get. I know, Tony, you compared him about where he was ranked with someone like Jalen Milroe, who of course has the, kind of hardworking, nature to become better than what his ranking out of high school is. But, you look at the quarterback room in general now, like you mentioned, it is pretty deep. That was something I was going to ask you where, they get Austin Mack, obviously lost Julian Sand. He was a Saban casualty, unfortunately. But, you have Ty Simpson, Dylan Lonergan. Obviously, you're likely going to lose Milroe after this season. You have Austin Mack. And now you throw Russell into this mix. I mean, that's about as strong of a quarterback room depth-wise as you're going to get.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, now you're probably going to lose some, though. That's kind of like what I said. I'd expect someone to transfer. Yeah, Alabama kind of lucked out and didn't have a transfer this year. It probably won't be as lucky. I mean, they're definitely – I'd be absolutely floored if none of the quarterbacks left. I just can't see either. Jalen Milroe's – the more likely result is that Jalen Milroe is going to, go pro, going to have the year – if he has a year like he did last year, he'll probably, he's got so much potential athletically that I think there'll be NFL teams lining up for him. Let's say even if Jalen Milroe struggles, heaven forbid loses the job, then I feel like he probably ends up transferring to another program to make it work, So I don't think Jalen Milroe's coming back to Alabama. This is his last dance with Alabama. It's probably his last dance in college football. So you've got him out of the picture next year. You've got, Ty Simpson's going to be probably stepping in, but even then, he'll be higher in terms of years. What will he be like? He's a redshirt sophomore this year, right? So he'll be a redshirt junior next year. And I think I've got that right. So other than that, does one of the Austin Mack or Dylan Lonergan, does one of them leave the program? And then you probably need that third guy anyways. So I think getting Keelon Russell is going to be big. I don't expect him to come in at Alabama and start right away, but that's probably going to be beneficial to him. He'd probably be able to kind of build himself up and be ready for it. He's definitely somebody, though, that's, got a huge potential ahead of him. And, he will help to add that depth. We've seen what Kalen DeBoer does with quarterbacks. It'll be interesting to see, he'll have a couple of them now in Austin Mack and Keelon Russell, who he's worked with, their entire career. And I think that will probably help as well.
Yeah, definitely. He is technically the second highest ranked recruit in Alabama's now 11-man 2025 class. He is 2 spots below Duke Johnson, the 4-star linebacker out of Georgia. So a tight race there. Obviously, there will be more Rivals 250s that get updated, and we'll see, where those things shake out. And you'd have to think, like Tony said at the top, he plays for Duncanville, a good season there, probably has him climbing up the QB boards. But I think you're right. This is just a massive get heading into, the rest of June. I mean, it comes off of the first official visit weekend. There's still a long way to go here, even in the summer kind of recruiting stretch before we get into the fall, where even more names will come up. There's a ton to keep track of. We've got it all on the site, for subscribers. But yeah, just a massive get, Tony. Keelon Russell in flipping him from SMU to Alabama. Like we said, he's just getting a ton of buzz. And so it's like, it becomes more of an open race. Obviously his head was turned away from the local school. So a huge pickup there for Alabama. I mentioned it's during this first official visit weekend, which was, of course, started on May 31st on Friday, went to June 2nd. These players were there. Ton of names. There was a dozen guys on campus, couple of commits, and I guess now fellow commits with Keelon Russell, who joined him. Latsier Brooks was in town. Zamir Smith, 2 guys out of the East Coast. Brooks is a receiver. So actually now, Tony, Keelon Russell's Alabama's second offensive position commitment, we should mention too.
Sure.
Or a third. With Anthony Rogers, the running back, Latsier Brooks. Yeah, I forget. Everyone forgets about Anthony Rogers, who also will be a name to watch. He took an OV to Ohio State, and that reportedly went pretty well. He's been committed since.
Look, Ohio State is they're tough to beat now in the recruiting realm, both in terms of transfers and they're on top of it with NIL, and I mean, like that's going to be a tough school to beat. I mean, did you see the locker room that they came out with? I don't know if you saw that, but it was just like they've got a lot of money up there in Columbus, and so and it's a good program, so it's going to be tough to hold on to players. But Alabama has a lot to offer as well, and I think DeBoer is also showing that you mentioned some of the kids that they had on campus, and the 11-man class. I think you're starting to. This is around the time where Alabama kind of picks up its steam, and you're kind of see them making that move. And I think anyone that was kind of worried about Kalen DeBoer, he's kind of showing like, yeah, he's still recruiting the way that Alabama recruits. So I expect Alabama to end up with another top 5 class. It seems like that's the momentum it's kind of heading to, and things are looking good right now. I mean, take it one recruit at a time, and this is a good one to take at the time. But I think there's a lot of optimism in the program, especially after last weekend. I think things are. Alabama just tweeted a picture of Kalen DeBoer next to a race car and said, "What did it say? Keep it rolling" or something like that. I think things are rolling in the right direction though for Alabama.
Yeah, they've got the cold summer mantra on Twitter, which Tony and I were talking about on air. Well, we think that could tee up some maybe digs from the opponents, but
also I just hate it because it's like 90 degrees outside.
It's also not cold.
It's very much not a cold summer in Tuscaloosa. We need to try again. It's very deceiving.
Very ironic. But with Anthony Rogers, going back to him, I mean, he'll be an interesting one to keep following with his commitment. He's been committed since the summer of 2023, which is of course under Saban. So he's bridged the gap of the coaching change, but I certainly don't I'm not shocked to see that he's exploring some of his other options. But Latsier Brooks and Zamir Smith, who are there, Alabama is currently the only places they're set to visit. So they seem pretty locked in so far. Another couple big ones I mentioned, they had a 5-star running back, Jordan Davison, who's out of Mater Dei High School, another powerhouse that Alabama fans will be pretty familiar with.
Unlikely Mater Dei to Alabama pipeline is kind of like becoming a thing, right?
It really is. I mean, you go back to Bryce Young, and now you have obviously Zabian Brown, the 5-star corner this year, and Damani Jackson was at his days at Mater Dei. So Abdul Sanders is another commit in the 2025 class who's at that school. So Jordan Davison has plenty of people to talk to. They also had Chuck McDonald, a corner who goes to that school down this weekend. So you just might as well bring the whole team. Just pack them on a plane, get them on down to Tuscaloosa, and let them roam around.
It's a good pipeline to have. I mean,
it is a good yes.
I mean, I don't even know if this is the right thing, but it's like almost like the IMG Academy of the West, maybe, and not necessarily the same thing. But if you talk about like the amount of like talent it pumps out, that's a great pipeline to have. So getting kids from that school and beating USC to that school, I mean, is a big deal. And USC is also, we talked about Ohio State, but USC is another school that's really in the right direction. So I mean, like you're pulling these kids from Mater Dei, from Duncanville in Texas. You're competing with a lot of big powerhouses at states that also have NIL players, like really big time programs. And I think that's says a lot about the job that Kalen DeBoer and his staff, his whole staff, Courtney Morgan, Nick Sheridan was the primary recruiter with Keelon Russell. So, I mean, credit to him as well, so it's really a group effort, but I think that they've done an excellent job so far. And I think they've kind of proven some of the doubters, the naysayers, if you will, wrong a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a good pipeline. So in addition to those guys, Mater Dei commits to 2 others I'll mention. Jamarion Morrow, who is out of Memphis Melrose in Tennessee, was one of the biggest risers on the Rivals 250 newest rankings, jumped, I think, almost 150 spots up. Another running back option there. And then Ty Haywood, who is a borderline 5-star. I believe he's the number 21 player in the class, an offensive lineman, also out of Texas, plays for Denton Ryan, which is pretty close to Dallas, Duncanville area where Keelon is. So his head was turned by his official visit to Alabama. They were kind of slipping in the race for him a little bit. They had a really good official visit with him and now are a little bit more back in the mix. He grew up an Alabama fan. So the tide of that going for him as well. So
Then
those
Ryan's
aren't.
where that's where they got Drew Sanders. I mean, obviously they ended up working better for Arkansas, but still, that's another big, like you said, another big Texas powerhouse. So
Yeah.
you establishing those kind of pipeline. I wouldn't necessarily call Ryan High School at Alabama pipeline, but still, it's a place where if you start building some momentum there, I think it's going to pay off over the
Well,
years.
I think it goes right into your point of Kalen DeBoer is making the inroads in the right places that people want to see him make inroads in. Whether it's out west at a school like Mater Dei, whether it's in the South with some of the in-state and even Georgia commits that he's managed to ring in guys like Duke Johnson and Luke Metz, who I think are kind of the two of the premier guys out at linebacker. So I think that goes into your point, but yeah, Ty Haywood definitely is one to watch. These players aren't coming and going. These are going to be names that should stay in the brains of Alabama fans, even after their official visits here over the summer and through the month of June. And then just a quick roundup this weekend, obviously another official visit trip. Got my eyes on 2 more commits will be in town. Duke Johnson, who I mentioned already, and then Jadon Harmon, another linebacker commit. We have now that they have 11 commits, I can no longer say that half of the Tide's 2025 class is made up of linebackers.
There was a string of them though, right? Wasn't there like 4 or 5 in a row or like something like that? Like
they have 5 in total. 5 in total, and even have some eyes on a couple more. So they're strengthening.
It seems like they were like building an entire team at one point of linebackers. I know it's just the way it worked at that time, but
They are strengthening. And then 2 more running back targets I'll keep your attention on. Shakai Mills-Knight is a good running back. And then Bo Jackson, ironically. Relation that I've read to the great I don't want to make any Gumps mad. Obviously, Bo Jackson was a great running back, but of course for the other in-state school. But I don't believe there's any relation to this one.
We just need to have like Bo Jackson do almost. I wish there was like a Joe Namath that played for Auburn too, just to make it even weird. It's just but having Bo Jackson, play for Alabama and score touchdowns. Imagine Bo Jackson winning a game for Alabama in the Iron Bowl or something like that. That would just be so weird.
Very ironic. But yes, the 4-star running back who is well known mostly because his name is Bo Jackson. He is also an excellent player. He will be in town. And then another offensive tackle prospect I'll bring everyone's attention to, Michael Carroll. He's out of Pennsylvania. He's a Penn State legacy. His father of the same name, I believe, also went to Penn State. But Alabama's in pretty good position for him. Like Ty Haywood, I should have mentioned this when I mentioned him. They do not have an offensive line commit yet in the 2025 class. So that is a position that they are trying a lot of players out and looking to see who they might get there. But Michael Carroll's a talented 4-star. Michigan's another heavy contender there for his services. So there's some names. Obviously, there'll be there's more guys. I believe they have close to a dozen confirmed visitors again. So staff is getting busy. We'll be busy as well with all the content to keep you guys updated on who's going to be in town. I have received a report, Tony, maybe a bonus breaking news. Keelon Russell reportedly is not set to take those other official visits to Oregon and Florida.
That's big. I mean, I kind of expected, but that's big. That means that we talked about him being that recruiter, that kind of leading force, that wouldn't hold weight if he's visiting other schools. I think you're going to see him become the leader of this class, and that'll be really big. It'll be big for, establishing himself as a leader, among his 2025 classmates, which will help him when he comes on campus. They'll already see him as a leader. That will be big. Obviously, Alabama fans will endear them to them. So it will help Alabama as well, because it's one thing to have coaches talk to players, but if you have an elite player at the quarterback position, nonetheless, doing some recruiting for you, that always helps. So that's great news for Alabama. One, for locking in Keelan, but then also for, I think, what it's going to mean in terms of future recruitment.
No doubt about it. Well said. So Keelon Russell becoming the quarterback commit here for the Alabama Crimson Tide in their 2025 class.